Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Parallax Abstraction, and welcome to another episode of Retro Flashback, showcasing gaming's roots for a new generation. So, today we are actually going to be taking a look at another Genesis game. Wasn't my original intention, but after covering Altered Beast for my last video, I felt kind of guilty, because, well, Altered Beast, while an important game, is kind of a craptastic game. Not kind of, it is a craptastic game, it's awful. And even though I repeatedly said in that video, don't hold the Sega Genesis to the standard of this game, it was actually a really good platform that I really liked, blah 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 blah, I still felt guilty after recording that. That was not a good note to start the Genesis off on, so I wanted to make up for that. And today, we are going to be talking about Streets of Rage, which is a really friggin' awesome Genesis game. So, this was basically Sega's answer to Final Fight for all intents and purposes. Final Fight was a game released by Capcom and is one of the better brawlers out there. This is very much a brawler title, which is one of what I call the forgotten genres of gaming. You don't see a lot of brawlers anymore, but I really love this genre. It's not very popular anymore, but I like it simply because it's very simple to learn, very simple to pick up and play. Doesn't require necessarily a lot of skill to get into, but it's a lot of fun. It can be hard to master, but it's just a lot of fun. You can get in and button mash if you want, or come into it in a bit more of a technical manner, but still generally be assured of having a pretty excellent time. And I really wish we could see more brawlers in this day and age, but this is a very good example of it. It is kind of like Codename Viper was to Rolling Thunder. It is kind of a pretty blatant ripoff of Final Fight, but the thing is, the difference is that when I talked about Rolling Thunder and Codename Viper, I talked about how, despite being a pretty blatant ripoff, that I thought Codename Viper was a better game because of some of the additions it brought to the table. That's kind of not really the case here. Both Final Fight and Streets of Rage are very excellent games in their own way, in my opinion. And I hope to give you a little bit of an example of that here. What's also really cool about Streets of Rage is that this is a series that, albeit it came out on a number of different platforms, including the Master System, a system older than the Genesis, it actually originally started in the home, whereas Final Fight was an arcade game. This is actually started as a home game first, and not needing to suck quarters from people's wallets, it definitely shows in that, and I think it does help improve the game experience. So, enough preamble, let's get going here. You can play this co-op if you want, but I'm just by myself, so I'll be doing that here. One of the biggest selling points of this game that you're going to hear right off the bat is the music of legendary game music composer Yuzo Koshiro. This dude is incredible. He does amazing things with chiptune processors, and the one problem with the Genesis was that a lot of the soundtracks on this system tended to sound the same, especially because a lot of the games on this system were from Sega. But Yuzo Koshiro was he's just amazing. He was able to make this music chip do things that nobody else could. And he's done a ton of games, including games for other platforms as well. But you'll notice at the beginning there that he actually owns the copyright to the music in this game, just the music, which was a very unique thing to see back in the day. But music in this game is really does set it apart from Final Fight. So yeah, you got your three characters here, different mixes of abilities as you can see. I tend to play pretty well with Blaze, but I'm just going to go with the all-rounder here and go with Axel. And here comes the tunes. Oh yeah. So yeah, what is this game? It's a brawler. What do you do in a brawler? You beat people up. That's pretty much your goal, and it's awesome. This is what I love. There's brawlers are unique in a few different ways. Like, the concept, as I said, is very simple. Like, your goal in this is just to beat people up. And even compared to a lot of other brawlers, this one is very simplistic. You have one attack button, one jump button, which you can use in concert, as I'm doing here, and you have a special attack button. The special attack was executed in Final Fight by doing a special button combination, but here it has its own button. And, well, I'll show you when we get to a bit of a bigger area why the special attack in this game is just ludicrous and awesome. But what's great about Brawlers is that, yeah, they're very, very simple. They can be difficult, but they're dead easy to pick up and play because there's just a couple of buttons and you can generally get through at least most of them by just mashing for the most part. Like my girlfriend, who pretty much doesn't play games at all, I could sit her down with a Wii remote right now and put her in front of this game and go, look, this button attacks, this button jumps, this button's your special, you only can use the special rarely, let's play, and she'd have no problem picking it up. And that's what's great about this genre. It doesn't require a lot of explanation. You can just sort of sit down with it and just enjoy beating dudes up. And for the most part as well, what I really like about Brawlers is that they're ridiculous, but they know they're ridiculous. Like, okay, so I'm like this crazy street vigilante type guy, right? Taking out these street gangs of clones. And, you know, when I get a little bit stuck, I can do this. I call in a cop Ferrari where the guy shoots a rocket that causes a firebomb and blows everybody up. What? And that's what's awesome. Like, it doesn't make any bloody sense. I'm not a cop. I'm some crazy vigilante guy, but I apparently have cops in Ferraris with rocket launchers on speed dial. And there are levels in this game where it makes even less sense. Like, at least here, you know, it's a road and, you know, the cop could have been out patrolling or whatever when you called them in, and sure. But there's later levels in this game where it makes zero sense for this car to come out of nowhere and shoot a rocket at guys. But it does it. And the thing that I love is that it owns that. And this isn't just this game. You know, a lot of the Technos Brawlers were very much like this too. Their storylines and their fiction and their world was just dumb. But they didn't take themselves seriously at all. They knew it was ridiculous. They knew it didn't make any sense. Like, look at this. I'm fighting leather-clad dominatrixes with what look like police hats or something on. Like, this is what comprises a street gang in this city, you know. But the game, you know, it plays it straight-laced for comedic effect. You know, it had, and the Final Fight games were like this too. They're not trying to send a serious message. They're not trying to carry this crazy emotional narrative or have these characters that have, you know, deep, dark histories and, oh god, this is a tale of redemption and everything else. It's just crazy, dumb fun. And crazy, dumb fun is something we so rarely see in at least mainstream video games now. So many people, you know, feel that they need to be telling a riveting story and that they need deep characters and whatnot. And don't get me wrong, I don't mind any of that stuff. And here we go. First level bonuses, get some pretty fat bonuses out of this. There is score in this game, obviously, so you could try to score tack it up if you want. Oh, listen to that beat. Gotta love a good Yuzo Koshiro beat. Oh, yeah. So, yeah, and these games didn't take themselves seriously at all, and I really, really respect that about them. It was an entire genre where that was just kind of the general way things were done. Is no one really tried to tell serious stories with these, and I am all for deep narratives and interesting characters, but sometimes you just want to beat dudes up and kind of giggle about the reasons behind it. And this genre, and in particular this game, does that. What I like about this series, as I was saying, is one of the advantages that Streets of Rage does have over Final Fight is that Final Fight started in the arcades. It eventually became principally a home series after it had greater success in that arena. But starting as an arcade series meant that it was focused first and foremost on monetization. You know, an arcade game, their goal is to make you feed as many quarters into the machine in as short a period of time as possible. So the game was both very hard and very, very cheap as a result of that, as many arcade games were. But because this game started on the Genesis, and it did make it to the I forget the name of it right now, but Sega did have a short-lived arcade platform that was kind of like the Nintendo Play Choice system, where all it literally was a Genesis with a bunch of games preloaded on it, and you, rather than buy credits, you actually just paid for time at the machine. And this came out in that venue, but this was not designed first and foremost as an arcade game. So as you see here, even though I'm commentating over this, you know, I kind of chewed through that first level, and I'm doing pretty well on this level too, right? And that's because these levels are decidedly easier. This game does ramp up the difficulty, and it does definitely get much, much harder the further in you get, but it's able to scale that up at a much more sane pace. It doesn't start off crazy hard. It's able to slowly ramp the curve up, because this is a home game where you don't have to feed quarters into it, and they know you've got time to put into it and sort of work on mastering it and whatnot. And that's a real distinct trick. This is definitely a much easier game to get into than something like Final Fight would have been. And that was kind of unique. Final Fight was definitely better on the technical front, both in the arcades and on the Super Nintendo. It had a much higher frame rate. These videos are only done at 30 frames a second, so you're not really able to see the difference here, but this game runs at 30 frames a second, and it is a rock solid 30 frames a second, but it definitely doesn't feel as smooth. The animations are not nearly as detailed, and the control response doesn't feel quite as smooth as it would on a 60 frames a second setup. That was something they did fix in the future. This game did get 3 iterations. There is a Streets of Rage 2 and 3. I actually own all 3 of them. And the second and third games both turned up the graphical fidelity and also ran it at 60 frames a second, which is very, very nice. That's the one real shortcoming of this game, is that though it generally does play fine, it really was technically a fair bit of a step back from its competition at the time. But it's still a very, very, very good game. A lot of people say that Streets of Rage 1 is far and away the best entry in the series. Yeah, you know what? Eat Police Bazooka. I love that little animation too, with like, what's going on? What's that thing coming in? Oh god! And yeah, some people say that this is the best game in the series, and that Streets of Rage 2 and 3 are really sort of pale in comparison, and I don't know if that's true. I like all these games, to be honest with you. I've never quite understood why people thought the other games didn't hold up. They are a little bit different. They did definitely refine the formula for the most part, but I don't dislike them at all. I think the whole series is very, very good. I don't think the other ones have anything quite as ludicrous as the Insta Police Bazooka, but you know. But yeah, this is a genre. God, I would really love to see this genre come back. Like, I've had what I've said before are kind of the 3, what I call the 3 forgotten genres, which are brawlers, shmups, and pinball games, which are all 3 types of games I love to death, and which kind of died off largely with arcades. And we've started to see a resurgence of 2 out of 3 of those. Well, shmups never entirely went away. Shmups have always had a dedicated both development and player scene, but they became much more niche. But they're starting to come back a little bit, and pinball is starting to make a comeback as well, actually, with games like the Pinball Arcade and some other things. People are starting to get back into that. But brawlers are still kind of in the dustbin of history a little bit. The sort of most recent example of at least a bigger budget AAA brawler that I can think of was Rockstar's version of the Warriors that came out a few years ago for PS2 and the original Xbox. That game was awesome. I really, really like that game, but nobody bought it. As I understand it, it pretty much bombed, and the studio that made it has been consigned to doing support work for other Rockstar titles pretty much ever since. And that's a real shame, because, like I said, these games are... I don't know if there's necessarily a place for these in the $60 AAA market anymore, maybe not, but I'm surprised we haven't seen more indies take up brawlers or you know, smaller developers doing downloadable focus stuff, because these are great. I mean, there are some smaller games like Castle Crashers, I guess, is an example of a more modern, smaller brawler game, but it doesn't. That's a very good game, but it doesn't quite have the visceral feel of ones like this, in my opinion. And I like these ones that are sort of not cartoony. They're not realistic, but they're grounded in reality. You know, it's humans fighting humans, if you know what I mean. And yeah, I would really love to see this genre make a comeback, because it's really, really good, and in many ways it appeals to what a lot of modern game developers are trying to get to. You know, they're trying to be as mass market and broad appealing as possible, and there's a lot of both in this genre, because yeah, this game, as you're seeing here, definitely gets harder the further in you get, but it's really easy to pick up. You can explain to someone how to play a brawler, at least competently, in, you know, 10 seconds. Whereas almost any other genre, it's very, very hard to do that. You know, you can explain a shmup that maybe only has 2 buttons, but if it's anyway a technical shmup, you know, they'll get 5 seconds and get horribly murdered, which is no fun. But in a game like this, you can just sort of pound away on the buttons and probably get somewhere decent, at least, and probably have a little bit of fun and get a little bit of the cathartic feel of beating the snot out of crazy, like, pelican ninjas and dominatrixes and guys that look like they're wearing turtle shells on their back. So yeah, I don't know. I hope we see more of these. It would be a lot of fun. But this is one of the better games on the Genesis. One of many, many good games on the Genesis. And yeah, I thought that platform deserved a showcase of one of its better offerings after showing Altered Beast. I mean, Streets of Rage is not exactly an unknown title. It was very, very popular. But if you're someone who likes the Genesis and who likes brawlers or would like to try them out, this is a good place to start. There's no doubt. It's a very, very good representative of the genre as a whole and of the Genesis as a whole. But yeah, that is Streets of Rage, published and developed by Sega in 1991. You can get this. I'm playing the Wii Virtual Console version. You can get it there. It has also been in a number of retail Sega compilation packs that have come out over time. This also apparently did get an iOS version, though, as I understand it, the iOS version is pretty badly emulated. It's only one player, and it doesn't run very accurately, which is not cool at all. This is also on Steam on the PC, actually. It can be bought on its own or as part of a Sega compilation pack there as well. It's unusual to see games like this actually make it to computer platforms, which I think is really awesome. But yeah, if you want to play this game, there are a number of different ways to do it. Personally, I think the Wii Virtual Console is one of the better ways to play it because it looks really good. It plays well. You can play it with Wii remotes, which makes it really, really straightforward. And you just know you're going to get a solid experience that way, and it doesn't necessarily require you to track down a compilation for an older system or to maybe buy this along with a bunch of other games that you might not want. But yeah, I think people should check this out. It's a really, really good game for a really, really good system. My name has been Parallax Abstraction. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.